All right, naturally, we're going to have to jump right into the biggest, meatiest, most delicious topic of the day. And that is, of course, the backlash we faced over our review of the RTX 3080 Ti. And man, there's a lot of everyone, even internally, is getting in on this one. This is in the WAN Show doc. Anthony prepared it. Of course, as you guys know, Anthony is our GPU editor, so he was the one who benchmarked the cards and actually wrote the bulk of the review. He and I sat down together, as we always do, and talked through it. We were both happy with what we had put out there, and of course you guys did not agree so much, but even Riley's getting in on it. He's got comments in the doc. He's like, hey, make sure you emphasize this part. So let's go through it. Our review of the RTX 3080 Ti was largely positive based on our position for the card, which is that it's pretty much a cheaper version of the RTX 3090, which, if you guys remember, had an MSRP of $1,500 US. And it's not like this is based on nothing. All of its core specifications are within 2.5% of the 3090, except for the frame buffer size, which is half. And we talked about this in the video. The fact that it has half the frame buffer means that if for whatever reason, like say, for example, a global silicon shortage, NVIDIA was having trouble getting enough of the GDDR6X memory that they need to put on the board, they would be able to make twice as many 3080 Ti's compared to how many 3090s they could build. Performance testing put it at or above the RTX 3090 in most scenarios. So our takeaway was that, yeah, it sucks that it's more expensive than the RX 6900 XT, but it's still a good value. Hold on. Stop. Luke,
Relax.
stop. Just relax. Everyone relax. Good value. You have to listen to the rest of the sentence. For anyone who was looking at the RTX 3090 for gaming.
So to be clear, that doesn't mean for everyone. I want you to reanalyze that sentence for a moment.
Okay.
People that were already shopping for a 3090,
yes,
this is a good value.
We also framed it as a good value if you can get it at MSRP during the scalpocalypse. Okay. This sentiment was not shared by the entire tech community. Gamers Nexus claimed the card was a waste of money, saying gamers were being robbed blind. All right, that's the quote. They even announced that they left the keynote early in disgust. Hardware Unboxed called it a shameless money grab, saying NVIDIA failed to read the room. Hardware Canucks proclaimed that the 3080 Ti was not a new hope for gamers. But, okay, why? As it turns out, people thought the RTX 3080 Ti was going to be more similar to an RTX 3080 and that it would be priced accordingly. Not only that, but the perception is that these GPUs would otherwise be destined for RTX 3080s. And what's happening is, rather than taking 3090s and making more of them, NVIDIA is taking what would have been 3080s and marking them up. So as a result, reviewers have pointed out that the performance is a mere 7 to 10% better than the RTX 3080 for a hefty double the MSRP. Almost. So it's $1,200 versus $700. That looks an awful lot like the scalping behavior that we and other tech outlets have decried over the last months. But the problem is that it is not a beefed up 3080. It is a very ever so slightly nerfed 3090. Both of those cards, the 3080 and the 3090, do use a GA102 GPU, but they are not entirely the same thing. And we've already had the conversation about the RTX 3090's pricing. It is really high, and it was really high before. And the intention, which has been, the rumors have been swirling about a 3080 Ti for months. The intention was clearly to plug the massive gap that AMD's RX 6900 XT blew in NVIDIA's lineup, coming in at $999. Okay, so there's all of that. And actually, you know what? I'm not quite done with that, because Gamers Nexus, I love Steve, but saying gamers are being robbed blind is sort of implies that they are being robbed. You don't have to give NVIDIA your money. And in fact, if you are a price sensitive buyer, I would go as far as to say that you should not be shopping for a top tier, absolute highest spec GPU, which to me, this is. It matches the performance of the 3090. Why are you even having this conversation? This is clearly a Halo part, and a $1,200, $1,250 or whatever it worked out to, a $1,300 price point for a top spec, absolute top of the line GPU is hardly a new concept, even before there was a worldwide silicon shortage. So it's like, yeah, sure, fine. It's not a great bang for the buck. Was it ever going to be? When was the last time we had an 80 Ti card that was like bang for the buck? Hold on a second. I'm gonna check something real quick. 2080 Ti MSRP at launch. Just curious. So the 2080 Ti launched at $999 plus. Okay. On nvidia.com. I just hope this isn't ENUS. Yeah, on nvidia.com, the latest pricing for it for a Founders Edition, because remember, Founders Edition is not necessarily the lowest price variant. A Founders Edition is $1,200. So yeah, it's not a great deal. But what did you guys think was going to happen? That NVIDIA was going to somehow, I mean, they've had earnings calls, they've had investor calls, they've said this shortage is going to last throughout the rest of this year. So did you think that they had somehow managed to magically find more supply? And that like this was going to be the new hope for gamers, as Hardware Canucks thought it might be? What new hope for gamers? NVIDIA has already come out publicly and said there's no new hope for gamers.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that sucks. That really sucks. But why are you shooting the messenger here? I don't really understand it.
There have been some 80 Ti launches. Like the 1080 Ti was actually, like, if I remember correctly, pretty strong for bang for the buck. But I don't think that's a normality.
So 1080 Ti is an interesting one because it used the same GPU as the Titan of that generation and launched, however, I forget how many months later than the 1080, but it was based on a completely different GPU. NVIDIA, I'm trying to remember, because there was that trend for a while where ever since from Maxwell on, for a little while we were getting, no, because 680 was whatever 04, and then 780 was the top, the largest die, and then 980 was back to the smaller die again, and then the TIs have always been based on the largest die in the particular architectural family. So you can kind of go back in NVIDIA's history and find examples to prove either point. What I'm trying to say is that this is not without precedent at all. So 1080 Ti's MSRP at launch was actually $700, yes. And that was the top performance card at the time. Yep. So anyway, hold on. Let's keep
like
going.
I was saying, it's not necessarily a normality. Just because there is one that you can point at doesn't necessarily mean that it happens all the time.
So, okay. Moving on a little bit here to the concept of MSRP itself. What an MSRP is a manufacturer suggested retail price. And I don't expect our average viewer to have this context, but NVIDIA's manufacturer suggested retail prices are sort of a big load of bullshit. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So number one is that NVIDIA doesn't manufacture anything. So what's a manufacturer suggested retail price from someone who doesn't actually manufacture anything? TSMC makes the dies. Micron or Samsung makes the DRAM, or whoever else. Someone like Foxconn is going to make the actual boards. I know Cooler Master is heavily involved in OEM manufacturing of things like coolers. in some cases, GPU coolers. NVIDIA actually manufactures nothing. They contract everything, which doesn't mean that they don't have great technology or that they don't have a role to play in the pricing of products based on their technology. But what it means is that they actually don't have to give a shit if any money gets made at MSRP. Because where NVIDIA makes their money is in the sale of the GPUs, and I believe the memory is usually included as part of the package that NVIDIA allocates to their various board partners. NVIDIA makes their money at actually an earlier stage in the stream. And it's only with the more recent edition of Founders Editions that NVIDIA has even gotten involved in being a board partner for their own products. So NVIDIA makes their money at this completely separate tier and leaves anywhere in the neighborhood of as low as, I've heard as low as like 1% profit for their board partners to hit MSRP. And
which is pretty ridiculous.
Which is ridiculous. And
especially
remember too,
it's not the end of the line.
Remember too, that just because a board partner could hit MSRP doesn't mean that they actually want to focus on that board, because a lot of the time, the way that a board partner like an EVGA or an ASUS wants to differentiate their product is by making it better than the bare minimum that NVIDIA specified. So what interest does an NVIDIA board partner have in shipping a product that they believe to be not up to the standard that gamers who are spending, let's say $1,000 or $1,200, it doesn't matter. Whatever the standard of build quality, a gamer who's paying that much would want to spend at no margin. What is in it for them? All they stand to do is make no money and potentially damage their brand. Great. I'm an EVGA. I'm super into that, right? Wrong, obviously.
Absolutely.
So that's why you often see the launch cards come in at MSRP, or at least reasonably close. And then unless there's a glut of supply and not enough demand, what you'll see is these super clocked or Strix or classified or you know, what's that, Aorus or whatever.
Or the Wayne edition.
Yeah, you'll see all these other variants pop up at anywhere from $50 to $100 to even like $200 over the MSRP. That's because NVIDIA doesn't care about their partners making margin at MSRP. So MSRPs in the first place are kind of nonsense from NVIDIA. Now, Gamers Nexus's take is that the MSRP difference is comparable to the RTX 3080s at the time of launch, and that scalping will scale accordingly. But that's not typically how it works in the secondhand or in the secondary market. So, I mean, I know a thing or two about shopping for used GPUs. We've now done, what is it, 8 Scrapyard Wars or something along those lines. And if there's anything that I've learned from all the time that I've spent, not just filming Scrapyard Wars, but also being a bargain hunter on the secondary market when I was building PCs for friends or clients, or for myself, I would often flip hardware so that I could just like try everything. And then, you know, not actually have to pay for it. Because if I just buy it and sell it for the same as what I paid, then effectively I got to use it for free, right? I just have the cash flow tied up. So I've been playing this game for a long time. I don't know how much used hardware Steve has ever actually bought in his life, but the way that it works is typically it's way more closely tied to actual real world performance and what else is available on the market. And that is the way, and that has always been the way. So something that performs way better, has more of a value proposition, regardless of what the MSRP is typically going to be worth way more. And something that has a lesser value proposition is typically not going to just scale, you know, according to the same percentage of inflation over MSRP as another product would. I have never seen it work that way. The reality of it is the secondary market is a more pure what the market will bear in terms of pricing than what you see from like a manufacturer, from a manufacturer suggested retail price. And that's something that I'd be happy to go toe to toe with Steve on, because I think that is just based on I don't know what I really don't know what he's basing that on, honestly. So now let's talk about, whether the $700 MSRP RTX 3080 actually even exists. So here's some Asus MSRPs as of March without tariffs. They've got the Strix OC RTX 3090. That is an $1,849 card. We've got their RX 6800 XT. That is $909. This is Asus's MSRP. Remember, this is the actual manufacturer. We've got the Strix OC RTX 3080 at $899. And then we've got the Asus Dual RTX 3070 at $649. That is $50 less than NVIDIA's MSRP for the 3080. But remember that is Asus's low-end 3070. Then there's the tariffs. So anything being shipped to the US from China is subject to, what is it again? I forget if it's 15%. I can't remember. We had to deal with this for a verified actual gamer program, but it's substantial. So corrected for tariffs, those MSRPs are now $2,200 for that Strix OC 3090. Over $1,000 for the 6800 XT. Nick just messaged. He says it's around 25%.
Yeah.
Over $1,000 for the RTX 3080 and $679 for the 3070. Now, something that is also really interesting that we learned from the Verified Actual Gamer program is not every card coming into the US is subject to the tariffs. So EVGA, for example, was able to get way closer to the original MSRPs of the 3070s that we sold through Verified Actual Gamer program because those boards were manufactured in Taiwan. But here's a problem. Remember, you're NVIDIA, right? Put yourself in NVIDIA's shoes. You have a lot more forces weighing on you than just what gamers would like a card to be priced at. Like something as simple as a capacitor could easily have gone up in price 200, 300, 400% because of the worldwide electronics supply situation that's going on right now. So you have pricing pressure on you. It's obvious that DRAM pricing pressure was a big part of the reason for the existence of the 3080 Ti. Like there's a reason they cut it in half from the 3090 and kept everything else basically the same. So you could have pricing pressure on you. You could have pressure from your resellers, for example. They might say, hey, don't price these things too low because, let's say I'm a Micro Center, for example, and I'm looking at it going, why am I not able to take advantage of any of the margin that clearly the market will bear in these products? And NVIDIA might say, look, we're going to prioritize gamers over your concerns there. Forget it. You guys should be happy to have GPUs at all. And great, they can do that. But they also have other forces on them, like say, for example, their board partners. Let's say, for example, that I am I'm trying to think. Okay, let's say I'm Pallet. To my knowledge, Pallet manufactures all of their boards in China. So, Pallet might be a bad example because I don't think they're in North America anymore. I know they were for a bit. I'm going to have to double check. I'm sorry, guys. Give me a second here. Pallet. They might have pulled out. Yeah, there's like one RTX 2060 dual or something like that. Whatever. I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head. It's not terribly important. The point is, NVIDIA has board partners that do the vast majority, if not all, of their board manufacturing in China. If NVIDIA were to set an MSRP that is literally below what that board partner could achieve once the tariffs are applied, which remember are about 25%, and you can, if you're American, you can thank your government for that. If they were to do that, they would be putting that board partner at a huge disadvantage compared to their other partners. I'm not saying that NVIDIA did make pricing decisions based on this. I'm saying that it's something that they have to consider. So NVIDIA still sells Founders Edition cards at the launch MSRP. That's one of the biggest arguments against our take. But there's a problem with that. Good luck getting one, right? Like if you can get one, great.
It's sort of been that way too. Not just during the shortage.
Yep.
It's often been quite difficult to get a Founders Edition card.
Oh, it's been basically impossible. I mean, NVIDIA has.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
What? Siri, I'm not talking to you. Yeah, it's been basically impossible to get your hands on one of those in the first place, let alone now. And besides, if you do, great, do it. My advice would be the same. All I'm saying is If you are in a particular price band and you find a GPU in stock at MSRP, including the 3080 Ti, you go for it. And if you're sitting there going, well, it's a bad deal, then don't buy it. If you had to calculate how many FPS per dollar, you are not the customer for a 3080 Ti in the first place. So why are you mad? What's the point of getting mad? Like, I remember this. I came into my job at NCIX as a buyer, right? As an enthusiast, but a sensible enthusiast, right? Like, I never went out and bought, an Athlon 64X2 4800 plus, an FX processor, right? I'd never bought an Extreme Edition. The only times I ever bought top tier GPUs were temporarily. Like, I still remember the time I bought two 7800 GTXs. Like, emptied my entire bank account as a student on two 7800 GTXs because there was this guy that I had done other smaller deals with that I knew was just a baller, and he would sell them at crazy prices. Like, he'd take a $400 bath on these things compared to what they were worth just to get rid of them because money just meant nothing to him. So I bought them at way less than what they were worth. I ran them for 2 weeks, terrified that some news was going to come out, that a replacement was coming and the value was going to tank. And then I flipped them. I was like, that was fun. I tried SLI. That was super cool. See you later. Because, right, so I came into my job at NCIX having only really experienced really high-end, top-spec hardware as a fun, scary experiment. And I thought going in, I was like, nobody actually buys that stuff, right? It's like, look, I'm smart enough to read the review on a non-tech. You should get the Q6600 if you want basically the whole shebang in terms of performance, instead of springing for the QX6700. I can't remember if it was a 67 or 68 at the launch. But the point is, instead of spending twice as much on an Extreme Edition, you should get 90+% of the performance for half the price, and then you should just overclock it if you really want more performance. Obviously, that was my point of view. But I had never had the experience of actually seeing the sales numbers and realizing, oh wow, people actually buy that stuff. Yeah, there's a completely different set of buyers out there to whom the difference between a $3,000 computer and a $6,000 computer is not particularly meaningful. That's the customer that the 3080 Ti was created for. It is what it is. And even if you're not that customer, honestly, and this is maybe a even more controversial take. Let's say that you don't have any money, or you don't have that kind of money to spend on a GPU. If I found a 3080 Ti and I desperately needed the money and I had no problem scalping, then I should just buy it, and then I should resell it. 3080 Ti, if you see it on a shelf at MSRP, pretty much no matter who you are, you should just buy it. If you're someone who's in that price range shopping for a GPU, you should buy it. If you're someone who's not in that price range and you're willing to scalp it, then you'd be crazy not to buy it. It is what it is.
If you're willing to scalp it, which is kind of I don't have the beat button yet, but it's not a great exactly thing to do.
Yeah, we're not supportive of that. We've gone out of our way. We've spent a lot of time and money. I mean, the Floatplane team has spent a lot of time, and I've spent a lot of money paying them to develop the Verified Actual Gamer program. Every single GPU that came into our hands from manufacturers went out at MSRP. In some cases, we were making as little as 3.5% profit. I don't care. It was about getting cards in the hands of gamers. And the Verified Actual Gamer program, even though we haven't done any drops, is still very much alive. So if manufacturers actually wanted these cards to go out at MSRP, we would be happy to enable it. I'm just saying, the take, you might not like it, but you also just might not be the customer for that product.
And you hope this doesn't trickle down, because that
Sure.
argument is all good until the next series of cards is scaled up above reasonable numbers because they're basing off of whatever. But that's not what we're seeing here technically. And I think there's a lot of evidence of that. Yeah, it's interesting. There are some people in research positions, people that need these cards genuinely for work, and that kind of sucks. But again, it's not really based. The pricing isn't really based off of the card that I think a lot of people are assuming it is.